I'd like to introduce one of the spokesmen and board members of the Iraq Veterans Against the War, Adam Kokesh.
Well, thank you, Isaiah, and congratulations. And let me just thank everybody for being here, for taking a stand, for standing with the Libertarian Party in the belly of the statist beast. To plant the flag here really has some special meaning, and the people that I know as libertarian activists in this city have a special place in my heart because of what you are up against. It's so monumental and it's so important. But in a way, I see that the national dynamic that people who live in dense areas or cities are more inclined to turn to the government for solutions. And I'm actually in some ways surprised that in this place where even your Republicans look, dress, and sound like Giuliani, you don't have more at a gathering like this. But the fact that you are the first who are coming out and planting that flag, or among a relatively small group in this sea of statism, I think deserves a special recognition. And for one, I'm proud to say that I really appreciate that every time I come to New York, and I'm not hanging out with the typical people that I hang out with in the anti-war movement, but real libertarian activists. It really means something. I want to start with a little bit of my narrative. I joined the Marine Corps in 1999 at the age of 17 out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, a little strip mall. And rather than try to remember exactly why I joined, I'm going to read to you from a form that I filled out at the MEPS, the Military Entrance Processing Station, called Why I Joined the Marine Corps. And you get to read all these different things that you can check off. What I hope to gain by being a Marine, check as many as apply. And I'm not going to read you the whole list because I checked almost every single one of them. But then you have to describe in your own words why I joined the Marine Corps. Most applicants fail this test, but they let them in anyways. My answer was, I feel a responsibility to take part in the national defense in some way. For whatever short amount of time and whatever minuscule part of it that I am, I would like to do my part, and I feel the Marine Corps is the best way for me to do this. Now, I've since learned the hard way that the greatest enemies of the Constitution of the United States of America that I've sworn oath to support and defend are not to be found in the sands of Iraq or Afghanistan, but rather right here at home. And I feel that what I'm doing now as an activist, as a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War, as a member of the Libertarian Party, as part of the Campaign for Liberty, is a far more meaningful way to serve my country and to participate in the national defense. And I bring the same commitment and I'm willing to make the same sacrifice in this service as I was for the Marine Corps. And I hope that all of you can find some of that in yourselves, and those of you who have served, those of you that haven't in the military, because what you are doing here, what you're doing participating in just the Manhattan Libertarians even, is on that same scale. And now the people have died for saying less dangerous things than what we are saying in terms of dangerous to the establishment right here in this room. And I think that also deserves recognition. That it's not just a sacrifice, but that there is a certain courage in being here and a courage of your convictions. And I'm going to get a little bit more to that. But first I should explain how I got to Iraq. Because I've always been a libertarian. Since I knew what the word meant, I was actually a member of the party for a long time before I got back from Iraq and was finally able to afford a lifetime membership. And I got this card. I don't know, how many of you recognize this one? Anybody? All right. But the reason I still have this, because I got the new one when they came out with the new format. Everybody's seen this, right? Because there's a bigger push for this. And it has membership data, ID, expiration, all that stuff, even the party address. But why would I carry the old one? Does anybody know? What is it that makes this one special?
That one has the principle, statement of principle on it.
Bingo. Statement of principles. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal rights of others to live in whatever manner they choose. And that has always really spoken to me, and I'm baffled why they took that off the new card.
I know why.
Well, we'll leave that for another discussion then. But I think it's just important that we hold on to that. So I joined the Marines wanting to participate in the national defense and really believing in a form of American exceptionalism, believing in the ideals of libertarianism, believing that even the Marine Corps had a net effect of peace on the world. And I said, well, maybe if more by its presence than by its actions. But I really believe that, and I still believe that it can be a force for good, at least in today's world. But in the lead up, see, well, I was a reservist. I was in the artillery in Southern California, and my unit was Pico Rivera. And 9/11 happened while I was in college. Didn't particularly affect me more than having the next day off school. I didn't really know anyone who lived in this area. And then we had the run-up all of a sudden to the war in Iraq, which seemed to come out of nowhere, but I wasn't particularly engaged politically at the time. At that point in my life, I was more a typical college student. As I was president of the Libertarians of the Claremont Colleges for a while, but I was also president of the Benjamin Franklin Society. And it is called that because Benjamin Franklin is attributed with the quote, "Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy." So as concerned as I was with forwarding the Libertarian Party platform on that campus, I was much more concerned with being drunk. So,
is there a difference?
all right. So then, in the run-up to the war with Iraq, I was actually against the war. And I went to the one day of student walkouts, February 2003. How many of you guys remember the demonstrations before the war? It was the height of the anti-war movement. Before it was dismissed as a focus group by this administration, as the American people largely have on a number of other issues. But at that point, there was still some optimism that people were listening, that the president was listening, that there was some there was some value to being in the streets and just and voicing your opposition to government policy. That, you know, at the highest levels of power, people really cared. And I think the decline of the anti-war movement since then, not just in this age of Obama, to give it an over-glorified term, but has really shown the sort of disenfranchisement of the individual in the United States. So I opposed the war before the war, but not as a veteran or as a member of the military, just as another college student. And after the war was over, the invasion rather, because I really do look at it as two distinct phases. There was the war, and there was the occupation. It's a very, very important distinction to be made. But although I was against the war, you could say for a while I was pro-occupation, because I really believed that there was some legitimacy to the rebuilding. And I should say, about being against the war, I believed in the narrative. I didn't have the great appreciation that I'm sure most people in this room do of the great tradition we have in this country of being lied to by our government. But I saw Colin Powell up at the UN with his little bottle of nutmeg or whatever the heck that was, and I believed the narrative. You know, I just, as someone who just come out of boot camp, like I believed the narrative of what was going on, but I was against what we were doing. Well, I believed the narrative again. I fell for it after the war and the occupation, that it was the right thing to do, that it was rebuilding, that it was cleaning up our mess and trying to do the right thing by the Iraqi people, and that was something that I wanted to do. But to be honest, I was a Marine, trained killer, and there were other people going off to fight, and I didn't want to miss the party. That was a big part of it for me. And so I volunteered to go to Iraq. And I was given the opportunity to apply to go with the civil affairs, and I was really excited about that, because in civil affairs, like what they told us we were going to be doing was rebuilding and, you know, working on mosques and schools and clinics and water projects and all the stuff that, you know, Bush was saying on TV that we were going to be doing that I thought was so great and noble. And I had to go to Iraq for myself to find out that really that was not the case. That the intent of the occupation, and many people saw this without having to go to Iraq, and for those of you who have spoken out against it without having to go and find out the hard way, I have a lot of respect for that. But I found out the hard way, because while I thought that what we were going to be doing was the tip of the spear, really leading the charge to rebuild, we were 6-man teams attached to regiments or battalions, and we had to beg those commanders, those unit commanders, to tag along on their convoys to get out and do our mission, because you couldn't go anywhere in the air without 6 Humvees with machine guns. And we were just 6 Marines. We had 1 or 2 vehicles, depending on the team. And we came up with a slogan, because we found ourselves constantly struggling to justify our existence to these guys. And it was, "We care so that you don't have to." I don't know if you're supposed to laugh at that, because it's pretty messed up. And there are still to this day civil affairs units in Iraq whose mission is to care so that the grunts don't have to.